Greetings, stalwart Tarnished, and welcome back to the glorious golden grace of Elden Ring. Last time on Elden Ring, we breached the outer walls of Stormveil Castle and reduced Godric the Grafted to a pile of ash. Afterwards, we returned to the smoldering ramparts of Morn Castle and set forth to the Lone Island to euthanize the Leonine Misbegotten. Beyond that, we descended far below the lands of Limgrave to the Siofra Riverwell and made game of the graceful ancestor spirit. After that, we ventured to the shorelines of Liurnia and wandered to the distant Carian Manor and found ourselves in a joust with Loretta, the spectral royal knight. This time on Elden Ring, I plan to get my bachelor's in badassery by breaking into the Royal Academy of Raya Lucaria, and afterward, do some more exploration of the Liurnia lakeside, and tie up a few loose ends. Afterward, I plan to return to the Rotted Vales of Caelid and do some more exploration around there, before we head off to war with the great general, Starscourge Radahn. If I have any time left afterwards, we'll ascend the Grand Lift and head out onto the glorious golden vistas of the Altus Plateau, and venture forth to the gilded capital of Leyndell. So, as you might have noticed by now, this is another one of those episodes with which I'm having to commentate over. I did not notice that my microphone was muted at the time, and I ever so humbly apologize for that. It's not a normal thing, I promise. Usually I tend to sneeze for coughs, or I mute for coughs, rather, and sneezes and stuff like that. Just so it's... I feel it's a courtesy thing, you know? And I don't want people that are watching gameplay to have to hear that kind of stuff, because it is kind of vile. It's a little bit disgusting. So I apologize henceforth. Hopefully it's not too big of an issue. So here we're taking on Glintstone Dragon Smaragd, and the reason I did not fight this dragon last time is because I just did not have the damage output. So here we're going to be taking him on to acquire the key to the gates of Raya Lucaria. And fortunately enough, I guess, the only thing that I'm going to have to really commentate over is this and the Academy itself. My microphone is turned back on for most of Renala, so hopefully that's not too bad. So it's really weird to play Elden Ring again, and relearn all the bosses, and all the fights, and all the AI and mechanics of the game, and everything like that. Coming back to it after 2 years is just so odd. So I figure it might be important to mention that currently my character is level 65. I heard that level 65 was about where you want to be for Raya Lucaria, so I'm hoping and praying that I didn't overlevel too much. Hopefully it's not too bad in terms of balancing. I do feel like my flask is a little bit ridiculous for where it should be at the game right now, and my weapon is at plus 14, which I don't think is massive overkill, but it might turn out to be. And this is kind of what I was going into before, is that given how much openness there is to Elden Ring, you can run off and end up exploring some completely other peninsula. You can run into different bosses. You can get different gear and equipment and come across different items, so it makes for a varied experience every single time. Unless you know the game exactly and where to go, and you know the maps and everything. But it's really hard to commit to memory, especially after 2 years. And I found that playing this game again, there are certain things that I recall, there's certain things that I remember, and there's other things that have just completely made their way from my mind. Which is awesome. Like, that's kind of what I wanted after not having played Elden Ring in 2 years in preparation for the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, which I've heard is quite fucking sizable. Apparently it's like a 50 or 60 gigabyte DLC, so apparently it's going to be freaking absolutely massive, so I can't wait. I've heard there's about 15 or 16 bosses in it total, and that there's like 4 separate maps conjoined, so it should be a really good time, I think. And the exploration that you get out of the maps that are in the base game is pretty crazy as it is per each area. Like, you can end up running around and spending about 20 hours in each area just looking for things and finding things. And even playing Elden Ring this time around, I have found a few things that I did not discover or uncover on my first playthrough, which maintains a lot of interest and it keeps a lot of intrigue. And I feel like it keeps the game alive and re-explorable and re-explorative in a certain sense. So I think I nixed it on that cave for now, so I believe we're going to be heading straight into the academy here in a minute. So I have to pick up the key from underneath the dragon. And I remember on this first playthrough, this key took me forever to find. I was running around Liurnia for hours and hours and hours and hours, and I could not figure out how to access the academy. Because it just wasn't very straightforward. They kept saying, you need a key, you need a key, you need a key. And I was like, okay, well, in a game this fucking open, where I can go practically anywhere right from the beginning, where the hell am I supposed to find this key at? So, my refusal to look things up when I play games blindly is I was asking my friend over and over where the hell I get this fucking key from. And he said, you have to kill the dragon outside. And I was like, what dragon? Because I just did not see it. It had blended in with the rock, and the lighting for Liurnia is so fucking gray and weird and dismal that, like, it was just very difficult to see it. And it kind of naturally had a chameleon-like blending with the environment. So I just overlooked it multiple times. So here we find ourselves, finally, at the Academy of Raya Lucaria. So if memory serves, yeah, we're going to be taking an elevator here in a minute. Unfortunately, they don't have any nice tunes to play for us to get us into a false sense of security, because Raya Lucaria is not my favorite area in the game. Let's put it that way. It is graceful and otherworldly in a way, and I do feel like the RPG elements in this game and all the magic and all the mysticism and everything like that is very well presented. But Raya Lucaria feels somewhat like a Harry Potter-inspired Bloodborne-ish area, and it's a little bit odd to me. And I think the Academy sense was a little bit better done in Bloodborne. Granted that you didn't really get to see a lot of the School of Mensis or anything like that, so this feels more like a giant academial building. Like, it's very grand, and it's very grandiose, I would say the word is, in terms of structure. And I think the presentation here is awesome. I think the color work is really good as well. So, I remember this room going very, very bad, because there's a couple marionettes that drop from the ceiling, and I do not fare well with spellcasters and magic users in Souls games, and stuff like that is precisely why. And again, I'll say it again, because I'm rocking medium equip load here. It's very difficult to get the roll range to outspace enemies when they attack in this game. It's just all the attacks are so mad aggressive, and they cover so much distance and area, that it just feels like it's impossible to outrange some of it with what I currently have. And you can see there that I'm trying to kill the caster, but like none of my hits register on him for whatever reason. It's just Elden Ring is a little bit weird. Like, I feel because they made the game so open and they dedicated so much of their material and their resources into building into that, that it takes out some of the polish in terms of some of the enemies and some of the hit detection and stuff like that, but it's not a really big blemish on an otherwise awesome game. This game is definitely one of my favorites to have been released, although I definitely have my gripes with some of the ways combat is constructed and some of the ways things are dictated, but for the most part, Elden Ring is a highly enjoyable experience. There's just so much to do. It's so open. There's so many bosses. There's so much content. There's so much build variety. There's an infinite amount of weapons and support items that I'm quite sure that I didn't find. There's so many playstyles to explore, and there's so many things that I did not spec or build into. And I'm definitely finding that this time around with Elden Ring, I feel like even though the inquisitiveness is a little bit gone because I know that I've seen it in my mind once before at one point or another, it's kind of lost that glorious sense of intrigue and interest, but in re-experiencing the game, there's also a dwelling curiosity to look into other playstyles and peek what their capabilities are. And I think that's something about Elden Ring that is going to keep drawing players back, especially when the DLC drops. And I know that when Elden Ring released, granted that I did not get to play it upon its release, people undoubtedly sunk ungodly amounts of hours into this game. And I remember my other character was around, I want to say 130 or 140 hours by the time I had done literally everything I could think of to do. And that leads me to say that in between the end of this stream and the next stream of Elden Ring that will come, I have found 2 or 3 more bosses that I did not even know existed in the Altus Plateau. I ran into a fight with Lanciax the dragon that I did not know was there. I ran into a falling star beast that I did not know was there. And there's something else that I ran into as well. I think it might be a jail or something like that I never knew existed. So, like, it's very curious. Granted that when I began the stream, I had said that I had ran one character through Elden Ring. I had done everything I could find possible. Every single thing I found, even Malenia, she took me hours, probably about 3 to 4 hours to beat her. And I finally did at long last beat her. And that felt like the ultimate victory. And again, I'm not going to go into how bullshit Malenia is and how bad of a constructed fight it is, but it was the thing that brought me the most gratification, I feel. But it didn't feel like I earned it. It felt emptily. It felt emptily achieved, I think is the best way I can describe it. And here you can see the FromSoft classic, me just getting gangbanged by multiple dogs. This game has such a bad issue with that. Every FromSoft game has a terrible issue with dogs. And it's fine if there's just like 1 or 2 dogs, but there's always got to be like a group of 3 or 4 that you're just getting relentlessly mauled by. And again, the dog comes out to play. Gotta love it. So I will say that it is definitely obscure and a little bit odd exploring Raya Lucaria again, because when I came through here the first time, I was quite convinced that I had done the entirety and majority of exploration that there was to be done, but in playing this, again, I feel like I've discovered a few more things than last time, and I found things on my last playthrough in both Raya Lucaria and Stormveil Castle that I know I did not find this time around. And it's really curious to me. And here we're gonna fight the Lord of Onyx, I think, is what this guy is called. He's basically a elven Legolas grandpa with a sword that has control and mastery over gravity. So yeah, take that as you will. So, I don't know if these enemies have any background or connection to Radahn, because Radahn has mastered gravity as well. And that's kind of his whole thing, is that's why he's the commander of the stars, is that he's conquered the cosmos. And I don't know if it's some weird foreign magic or anything like that, and that reminds me to say that when I start up the next Elden Ring stream, I definitely want to read into some of the lore descriptions and everything that we've found for items and everything like that, because I want to get a grander understanding of the story that Elden Ring proposes. And there's so many connections, I feel, that I just don't understand. And I definitely want to understand what Rykard is talking about. I want to understand what the fuck Radahn's whole thing is. I know Radahn has some sort of weird connection to Ranni, but I don't know what that connection is. There's also the great centipede that lies far below in the Lake of Rot that I remember. And I want to understand what all these things mean. And I want to understand what the Lucarians are about, like the whole Academy of Raya Lucaria, and all the wizardry and all the magic and everything around here. And from what I am to understand, I believe the Carians and the students of the Raya Lucarian Academy have something to do with the Albinarics, but I could be wrong about that. And then I know Mohg has some sort of connection to Miquella, and I don't know what the fuck any of it means. I don't know what any of it means. And I really want to understand exactly what Elden Ring is about, and what the game truly proposes. And I have no idea how the fuck I was able to iframe all that. I remember I was just as amazed when I did it, when I was playing here. And again, I feel like a lot of Elden Ring is kind of bullshit because the game just has like a massive amount of input delay. And I know people will deny that it exists, but it most certainly fucking does. And I'm sorry, if you believe this game has no input delay, you're out of your fucking mind, because it definitely most certainly has input delay like a motherfucker. Because a lot of the things that you see me getting hit by here, I'm reacting to, and it just doesn't come out in time. And it's kind of frustrating for somebody of my caliber when it comes to reaction speed. And I know that just sounds like, oh, excuses. It's like, no, it's... I know what my reaction time is, it's just it doesn't tailor, and it doesn't come out, and it doesn't happen in real time. So I don't know, I've been thinking about this for a while. I don't know if it's something to do with the latency for the pass-through for the capture card that I use, possibly. So it's very possible that what I'm seeing on screen is slightly delayed from what's actually happening or occurring within the game. And it's just, like, this is why I don't like magic casters in Souls games, because you just get relentlessly bombarded by shit, and it's obnoxiously bad. And I fucking hate it. It's really terrible, admittedly. And I've never really had a preference for magic in these games. I'm sure a lot of you have heard me say it before, is I feel like magic, while it provides a support element, like, if you mix a melee character with magic, then the game has a ounce of fun, and it has an ounce of identity to it. But if you were to go on full caster, it basically cheeses the shit out of the game for you. And I don't like that. I prefer getting up close and personal, and learning my enemies, and dynamically adapting and adjusting to patterns, and learning when I'm rolling attacks too early or too late, or when I'm misplaying, or when I'm being too greedy, because I feel like there's actual dynamic there. But if you just spend your entire time fighting the boss, staying 80,000 feet away from it at all times, and just spam magic at it, I feel like that kind of detracts from what the game is meant to present, in a way. Granted that every gameplay style is valid. Like, there's no invalid style. You can play the game however you want. It's designed to be approached and tackled however the fuck the player individually wants to. But undeniably, there is an element where the game just feels like it's less of an experience, and it draws away from the magnificence of it, I feel. But if you were to use magic to support a playstyle that engages you with enemies, then I don't think it's all that bad. Like, I see it as more of a supportive structural element. So you were seeing that when I was fighting that guy, when I would attack, it would hit his shield. He's using a buckler, which can't block attacks, especially when it's down at your side. The buckler doesn't have 100% physical damage resistance, so, like, I don't know what the fuck that property was. So here we see the Red Wolf of Radagon, and I haven't fought this thing in forever, and a lot of people have compared it to Sif, but I feel like it's a more dynamic version of Sif. And here I'm kind of trying to remember the attack patterns that this thing has. And I feel like I adapted somewhat well to this fight. Not as well as I would have liked, as with many of the fights that will occur in the future. Which are narrated in real time, of course, but yeah, Red Wolf messes me up here a little bit, but this is kind of around the time where I'm starting to feel like my weapon is a little bit too powerful. Like, with the amount of damage I do. So, like, I still have 6 flasks of tears left. And my weapon was hitting that hard. So, I don't believe that I'm under-leveled or over-leveled for this area. Like, my level feels adequate, so you can see right there I'm level 65. So I feel like my character level is adequate, but I feel like my weapon level is far excessive to what my weapon should be at this stage of the game. Remembrance of Godric the Grafted, honed into the Erdtree. A feeble man sought power through the grotesque act of grafting. One day we'll return together to our home, bathed in rays of gold. So, Godric the Grafted, I thought, was taking the golden grace of the first Elden Lord, Godfrey, and that's why his name is Godric. So I don't know if Godric and Godwyn or whatever, because I know Godwyn was the first of the demigods to die, and he became the root of the Erdtree, to my understanding. And I don't know exactly why Godric grafts things, but I said it before as I was going through Stormvale Castle, that I noticed a lot of the birds. I hadn't noticed this detail before, but the birds are capable of spewing fire. Like they've been mechanically warped or tinkered with or something of the sort, and they have razors and talons attached to their feet and stuff like that. And I was thinking that that might possibly have arose on account of Godric's hobby for grafting things, kind of like a weird taxidermy, like unholy, weird, vile act type thing. And, yeah, I'm getting mugged by pots in this dark back alley here. Like I said, Raya Lucaria is no fucking joke. Even the jars are evil. Now we just need the pots in Zelda to grow arms and give Link a bad time. So it's quite interesting, again, to delve into the lore of these games, finally, and start appreciating them for that aspect as well. Because usually when I play Elden Ring or a Souls game, I just pick up a weapon and I tenderize shit to death. I just bash it until it dies. And while that's fun and engaging and dynamic and good and all that yada yada, there's a different element and there's a different air to the game when you understand the symbolism and when you understand why things are the way they are, and why you understand, and when you understand why you're being opposed by certain characters within the game, certain NPCs, why you're fighting certain bosses, why certain bosses aren't typical, why they're in particular areas, what their backstories are, what they're tampering with, what they're trying to tamper with, the unnatural laws of order that they're trying to bend, and stuff like that. And I feel like it's very interesting going against the grain and going with the grain in a way as well, trying to learn the story and the backgrounds of all these different NPCs and all these different entities that embody and make up the narratives to these games. And they're left highly ambiguous. They're meant to be discovered. They're meant to be... So the way I like to describe the way Souls games do their stories is they give you a handbook and they give you a Lego set. They give you a guide, but the guide doesn't always make sense. You can't assemble every piece exactly how it's depicted, and you have to infer certain things. You have to make certain inferences, and you have to jump and leap certain gaps neurologically with what they present to you and what kind of tools you're given and what you're supplied with, in a way. And I've always found that incredibly interesting, because I can't think of any other fucking game in existence that does that. And it really gives Souls and Souls-esque games their own identity and their own appeal, and their own sort of flavor that you can't really get anywhere else. And I find that very, very interesting. And it's very, very cool, and I appreciate it as a connoisseur of a art form. Miyazaki definitely has a particular stylization with the way he goes about his games and crafting their worlds and everything like that. And the way he feeds that art into the concepts he makes for the bosses as well, and for the enemy designs, and for, like, what makes up the world in its entirety. And I feel like it's rich and rewarding beyond that of just gameplay, if people stop to look. It's kind of one of those things where, like, you appreciate the beauty of life. Like, you don't see it in the moment, but, like, every waking second, every waking moment that you live is truly a visceral experience in terms of the five senses. Like, you have, you know, touch, you have smell, you have sight. Like, there's so much beauty to these games that can be accessed if people are just willing to commit the time to play them and cherish it. And, you know, like, I feel like there's a very large player demographic and player base that doesn't do that. There's a lot of people that don't care about the lore. There's a lot of people that don't give a shit about the story. They just want to kill things. They want to see how cool the bosses are. They want to dick measure and see how many tries it took X person to kill this boss. Or, like, not even that. They just want to compare experience, you know, on a casual level and be like, okay, how was your experience playing through the game the first time? And that's something, again, really cool that I feel like these games do and no other game can do. So here we're going to be running up the stairs to the actual Raya Lucarian Academy, and somehow I fucking iframe that. I'm actually sat there in amazement. I'm in actual astonishment that I was able to do it, and check this out. I was able to do it again. What a god, right? It's okay. This guy up here beats my ass a little bit. I do the initial parry on him, and I get really overconfident, and then he checks me pretty bad, you'll see. I remember this guy being kind of a piece of shit on my first playthrough as well. But to be fair, I'm not going into him with full heals. I'm going into him with 4, So he's a Knight of Caria, so I land the initial parry right there, and do a swag kick on him. And then I'm like, okay, I'll do a charge while he's getting up. And then he just parries me, and he takes out like 70% of my health bar. As, you know, as Dark Souls does. So we do the Dark Souls typical, we go back and we chug up, you know. Just proper duel etiquette. I forgot that I can't parry jump attacks, even though that was a perfectly timed parry. I forgot that I can't parry jumps. He waited for my input right there so he could read it to delay his swing, so. I'm starting to think that the only way right now that I can beat this guy is to parry him to death, because he parries everything I do. Like, this is like an actual skill check NPC. And right there, I did my parry too late, because I was trying to accommodate for the fact that he was going to do a late swing. And here I make the mistake of, he pulls out his wand so he can no longer parry, and I could have just whapped him to death right there. I probably could have R1 spammed him to death, but I made the error of backing off. And that is going to ruin me right here. So we get the backstab, all seems well. And then, did you see the hitbox right there? Like, his move came out, and then there was a lingering hitbox that hit me anyway. I love that shit. Elden Ring is full of weird, quirky stuff like that. So here I'm planning to run back to my checkpoint, as you do when you're left with no Estus flasks in a duel. And it's an NPC, so I don't really give a shit about etiquette and all that. And I'm starting to realize that I can't get back this way, so I'm like, oh shit, I've screwed myself. I have to get past the boulders, and I have to get past this guy. Not that I was trying to cheese him with the boulders, I was just trying to get back to the checkpoint. And there I probably should have died, but I got very, very lucky. And here I run to the elevator, and I'm like, I'm gonna be really screwed if he catches me up. And then he catches me up, and I'm like, oh shit, okay. Time the roll, I frame the sword swing, leave him on the elevator. And here I go back in a sense of comedic relief to make up for the fact that I have to now run back to the checkpoint. I'm like, okay, so the good news is, I'm down here. The other good news is he's up there now. The bad news is, he's up there now. So here I am, running back to the checkpoint through the way that I had made it over here this time. So I'm unlocking this checkpoint right here, and I got very lucky in dodging that crystal shard blast right there. So here we unlock a shortcut to be able to make it back to that guy. And it's a very fortunate thing that I happened to come over here and kill all these enemies and kill all these wizards, because I know a stray crystal magic would have gotten me in the ass, and we would have biffed it here for sure. But thankfully, we're able to make it all the way back to the checkpoint. So we return to the checkpoint. And then we go back and we deal with the Carian Knight. So let's begin the long, shameful trek back. And let's go school that night. He's about to get his bachelor's and getting his butt kicked, because I'm about to go back and fuck that man's whole day up. Granted, he's a bastard, and because I rested at the checkpoint, I believe that resets him. So he should be reverted back to his initial starting position, and he should no longer be at the top of the elevator. Although I think I explore over here a little bit, because I remember there's a pumpkin man up there, and I'm pretty sure I paid him a visit this time around as well. Yeah, okay. That's what I had thought. And I'm sitting here wondering where this door goes, because I didn't remember passing by this door. But this door, for whatever reason, is another very odd checkpoint. And there's a warp gate over there, but I can't remember exactly where it takes me, and I don't believe I ended up taking it, because I wanted to stay within Raya Lucaria. So every time I play Elden Ring, every time I do a stream, I try and do the main content of the area, whatever is most accessible and whatever, like, the prominent thing to do is. And then I spend part of that stream exploring that area, and then I go to another area and try and do the same thing. And then on the next stream, whatever area that I end up leaving off in, I try to do a little bit of a cleanup exploration fest of that area. So next time in Elden Ring, we're going to be tackling the area of Caelid, and we're going to be exploring some more of Caelid. We're going to be doing whatever caves I missed, and we're going to be doing some optional content there. And I know there's some quest lines that I'm not going to remember exactly how to deal with. And then we are going to explore some more of Altus, and we're very likely going to get into Leyndell, the royal capital, on the next stream. So, coming out, checking the balcony, I don't know if there's any hidden walls up here that I might have missed. And I know Raya Lucaria has no shortage of hidden walls. There's quite a few. And yeah, I instinctively check here a couple times, but I do it in all the wrong places. So, I know there's a couple items that I've missed in Raya Lucaria, but when the narration comes back in real time, I do a little bit of cleanup of Raya Lucaria. So, please don't feel like I'm trying to stress my way through these areas and just get them done as soon as possible and just be like, okay, that's the end of Raya Lucaria. Like, that's the end of the area. We've killed the boss, we're out of here. I want to, like, fully explore the areas and what they have to present and everything like that. Yeah, he does so much fucking goddamn damage with his parries. It's just unreal. And I'm very lucky that he decided to go for that right there, because had he roll caught me, that would have been death. And here we fucking shank him again because he's a little bitch. We just put our boot print on his fucking chest. And yeah, I smartly back off and I wait for him to pull out his wand, because I know he pulled out his wand last time and I don't want to get parried again. And there we go. So he's finally down. That guy's an absolute bastard. I think nobody has exactly particularly an easy time with that man. And I do think parrying him is the best way to go about him, but not everybody can parry. And I'm good at parrying in this game sometimes, and I'm really poor at it at other times. And it's fun, because it's rewarding, because I was never ever able to parry in Souls games before. The only Souls game that I was ever able to parry in was Dark Souls 2. And I feel like that's because the combat pacing was a little bit less antsy, it was a little bit less wily, and it was a little bit less critical, so like I feel like I was able to adapt to it more. And it felt really rewarding in Elden Ring, finally being able to parry my enemies if I gauged them well enough, and I adapted to their movesets well enough. So here I'm trying to recall whether or not this is the door that leads to Rennala or not, and I didn't want to start the boss fight because I couldn't remember how the boss fight initiated. So I run back to the checkpoint one more time. And that's pretty much the end of this session. So again, I apologize so humbly. I apologize so much for being muted and not having the initial intended narrated experience for the game. And I hope this, in a way, makes up for it in some sort of weird vicarious sense that you're still getting a partial dose of the experience, I suppose. But rest assured, Mike comes on a couple minutes into the Rennala fight. I don't recognize that my mic is muted until midway through it, but I'm pretty sure you'll know when it picks up and it's real-time narration as opposed to this post-record kind of thing. And again, I humbly apologize. I can only thank you guys for watching and putting up with the lack of professionalism on my end, and I should be definitely committing to trying to make it a better experience for you guys, and I apologize for that. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next part.